In this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up row level security or RLS in order to create roles and set up automatic filters for your Power BI reports. We're going to go through the basics of how to implement this, as well as a quick preview of the Enhanced RLS Editor so that you can set up some basic roles, as well as how to use it to set up some dynamic roles. All of that and more. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan, and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. So the RLS feature is actually something that I've covered several times in the past, and it's essentially just a way to restrict data access to your users. So you might want to distribute the same reports to multiple users, and the type of roles that is assigned to them may restrict what kind of data they have access within these reports. And setting up RLS in Power BI is actually pretty simple. It just requires two steps: creating those roles and setting up the filters, and then assigning those roles to the different users. So we're going to go through it today so you also know how to do it. So we're going to start by looking at this demo file that I created for us today. It's a subset of the Northwind dataset, which is the typical dataset that we use for demos like this. So in this page specifically, I created a bunch of visuals in different formats, in a bar chart, a line chart, and tables. And let's say we want to distribute this to our different users, but our different users manage different countries, and we want to create roles so that for those users who are working in, let's say, the USA, when they open the same report, they can only see data from the USA and vice versa. So we have here in the table here country against sales. So the country is a column in the customers table, which if we preview this in the data view over here, the customers is basically just a list of all the different customers and which country they belong to. Now, if we go to the relationships here, the relationships view, we can see that I've already set up a relationship for us to not worry about it, but the ideal scenario, at least in this case, is for us to filter the order details, your fact table, using the country filter that we're going to apply into those roles. So the order details is here, and as you can see, it goes up towards the customers table, where you have, or we have, the country column, which we'll use as a filter. Essentially what we want to do is, if we have the country as a filter on this page, for USA, we just want this to be filtered to USA like this. So that is the scenario that we're going to work on first for this basic RLS setup. So I'm just going to delete this filter on this page. We're going to create this role for USA users by going to Modeling ribbon on the top and then selecting Manage Roles. From this window, you are able to create multiple roles here, which if we just click Create, we can rename our role. And as you can see, it's filled up these two other boxes here on the right-hand side, which lets you add DAX expressions or filters on these tables for this specific role. So let's say we want this role named as USA. We're gonna go to the customers table because that's where the country column exists. We're gonna go to add filter on the country. So now when we selected that option, it automatically generates a DAX expression for us, filtering the country column with a value as a placeholder here. Now we want to replace this with the USA because we want the USA filter to be applied in this country table, or in this customers tables rather. So we're going to replace that with USA. Just to make sure that it works, we're just going to verify DAX expression. And if there's no errors, then that means that should be done. So just for this demo purposes, I'm going to create another role. So I'm just going to create a new role. And as you can see, it creates a completely new role with no filters yet. So we can just apply more filters as we want to. So let's say we want to create one for Germany, just as an example. Again, we're going to go through that same route. So under customers, add filter, country, rename the value to be Germany. Hit the verify DAX, and then we're pretty much good to go. So we have created now those roles. So before we continue, let's actually preview how those roles will see this report if you have assigned those users to that role. And you can do it actually from Power BI Desktop here by clicking View As, which lets you select how you want to see this report if you are assigned to one of these roles. So let's say we select USA here, and if we hit OK, you will see that this is now showing us the preview of the report as USA. As you can see here from the ribbon at the top, it's showing now viewing as USA, and all of the filters or all of the data that they have access to will only show USA related values or sales. So now that's step 1 done. Step 2 is actually assigning these users to these roles. And to do that, we actually need to do it in the Power BI service. In order to do that, we need to first publish our report into the service, because that is where you assign those users. So we're gonna hit stop viewing here for now. We're gonna go to home, and we're gonna hit publish here. We're going to publish it to one of my workspaces. I'm just going to select my workspace for now. And now that it's published, we can just simply follow that link. And now we will have a preview of our reports in the Power BI service here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to the semantic model in my workspace. So going to my workspace here, we're looking for this report, Enhanced RLS. We're going to go to the semantic model, click the ellipsis icon, and select security. This is where you will see the list of roles that we've created in the Power BI Desktop, Germany and USA. And from here, you can assign users or groups to these roles. So let's say in the USA, we want to set myself, hit add. As you can see, now I'm listed as someone who is part of this role, which means that when I open this report, I should only be able to see the USA sales or data. So now if we hit save, that should be pretty much everything that you need to do to set up RLS. Just to note though that RLS won't apply to you if you're the one who is creating the report. That's because you have an elevated level of access to the report itself. So the RLS will only work to those users who have the viewer permission to access your semantic model. So any other permission types like admin, contributor, or member will not have the RLS implemented to them, so they will be able to see the full semantic model. So just one thing to bear in mind if you want to use RLS. So now that you know the basics of how to set up an RLS in Power BI, let's jump back to Power BI Desktop here and go back to the managing your roles. So when we were in this window, as you can see, if you're doing any type of basic filtering, it's pretty straightforward. It's basically just to filter, referencing the columns. And this is using DAX expression, which if you are familiar with DAX, you would be familiar with kind of the syntax and how it's written. However, if you are not sort of someone who works with DAX very frequently, you're not too confident with it, and you have to apply some more complex filtering other than just single filters like this kind of view can get pretty intimidating really quickly. So the Power BI team has actually released an enhanced RLS editor, which gives you a sort of drag and drop way of working with filters, your roles, when you're setting up your role level security, which is a lot more readable if you're not familiar with DAX, rather than writing the DAX expressions yourself. So let me show you how you can get started with it. So if we hit cancel here, let's go to the settings. So the cog icon on the bottom right, under preview features, if you haven't done yet, you can enable Enhanced Role Level Security Editor here. This will enable the RLS editor that I mentioned. So it requires you to just restart Power BI Desktop in order to work with it. So I'm going to restart it quickly, and I'm going to show you how this looks like. Great, so now I have restarted Power BI Desktop. Let's go back to the manage roles where we kind of manage our RLS. And now you are greeted with this enhanced RLS editor, which doesn't preview now the actual DAX expression that is generated, but in fact lets you use some UI to manage these roles. So we've created these ones, for example, the German and USA, and if we click on the filtered table here you go. So as you can see, you're now using some UI, which makes kind of creating and managing your role level security filters a little bit easier, especially if you're a beginner. So there are a few things to cover in this view. So the first thing is that obviously you can select your columns within these tables that you have selected. You can change the condition, so it's not just equal, so you can choose from these different options: equals, does not equal, like you would normally in the Power Query editor. You can change the value like you would before. You can create multiple rules, which is controlled, or the result of it is controlled by this drop down here. So let's say if we want to do 2 countries to be filtered with this Germany. So let's say if we want Austria, I just pick that randomly. And basically if all of these are true, then the tables will be filtered. But these can't be true because a sale or a customer can only belong to one country at a time. So we can set this, instead of an end, which is the all part of this, we can set this to any, which means that if any of these rules are true, then this filter gets applied. So those would be filtered. Another thing to pay attention to here is this new grouping element, which you can also do in the DAX editor, but it just makes it a little bit easier to do here in this view. So grouping works like this. So if you create and select multiple values here and select group, what it will do is it will group this set of logic together, and you can set when these values are true or not, separate from kind of your main filter. So you have your grouped values here, and then you can create a new one. Or maybe let's not do it in that same group. If you hit new here, so it will have a grouped value here. So if any of these are true, and then you have a separate statement outside of this grouping. So if you want to do all on this one, you can do so. So let's say you have a scenario where you want to check if the customer belongs to any of these countries, and you want to check something else, like customer ID, for example, it will apply these rules. You'll also notice this button, switch to DAX editor, on the top right. So what it will do is it will convert any of, or it will show you a preview of what code this these selections that you made here into a DAX statement, if you're more familiar with using the DAX equivalent. So I'm just gonna fill this one with a value, and then we're going to click switch to editor. So it will just show you how that looks like. So so this part is the grouped part that we have done, and then this outside is the one that we created outside of that grouping. So you will see that you can switch back between the default editor and the DAX editor. And I think I found a bug here where if I switch back, you'll notice that the groupings that you've set up disappears. And if you go back to the DAX editor, that grouping also disappears. So just one thing to bear in mind if you're switching between the DAX editor and the default editor. Lastly, I want to cover dynamic RLS, which lets you use tables in your data model to define what kind of access they have in your reports. So in this basic RLS setup that we have created, we create those roles individually and manage those filters by hand. But if you have a scenario in which you want to give kind of dynamic access and give kind of named access to these users without really having to manage them manually, you can use dynamic RLS to do so. So dynamic RLS makes use of the function called user principal name, which gets, or it gives you who is currently logged in with in that report. So we use that name that is returned by user principal name to then apply filters to what that user can see in our reports. So to start with, I just want to preview how this looks like if you are setting this up for the first time. So I'm gonna hit don't save for now because we don't really want to do that for now. I'm gonna create a new measure here. Logged in as. And then I'm gonna name this one, I'm gonna use user principal name, which if I hit enter, and I'm gonna put this in a card by itself here at the top. What it does is it gives me the name of the user who is currently logged in. Now it's showing me my sort of my local name because I'm kind of previewing this in my local machine. But if you publish this into the service, it will be the email address of the person logged in and viewing this report in the service. So just to show you how that looks like, I'm gonna republish this into the service. So as you can see, opening that same report but in the service gives me the email address of the person currently logged in. So this is the information that we're going to use to filter our reports dynamically. So what I've done, just for testing purposes, I've created a permissions table, which is what we're going to use. I've set up some limitations to some people and what country they have access to. So I would have access to USA and Germany, for example, and have a fictional employee, James, who has access to other countries here. And I have this one as well, just for testing, just my current logged in user in my local machine. We're not really gonna use this one, I don't think, but just to add some more values into our permissions table. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna insert this table into my report here. Just copy and paste it. I'm gonna name this permissions. We're gonna load this. You don't really need to set up anything yet, so let's just let it load for now. Let's go to the model view over here. Let's bring in the permissions. And you just want to make sure that you have a relationship between the country in the permissions table to the country in the customers table, where you have the country column. So this is what will control the filters applied to your report. Now, the next thing is to create that role, that dynamic role, into your RLS. Now, the thing with dynamic RLS is that you need to use the user principal name function, which you can't do natively here. So we need to actually do it in the DAX editor. So we're going to switch to DAX editor for now. We're going to create a new role. Well, we'll create a new role first. I'm going to name this one dynamic. And then we're going to switch to the default DAX editor. And we're actually going to filter the permissions table instead. So we're going to go to the DAX editor here, and we're going to apply a filter to the email. Email is equals to user principal name, which hopefully should be everything that we need to do. So let's try that one more time. So dynamic and other user. I'm going to copy James here, paste here, and there we go. So as you can see, it just gives James a view or access to just those countries, France and Venezuela, which is what we have set up in this permissions table. And that's really it for this video. So I have covered dynamic RLS and RLS setup in general a few years back already. And in my experience, there are a bunch of things that you could do to make your life a little bit easier, especially if you're distributing reports to bulk users. So if you're interested in learning how to set up dynamic RLS and other kind of techniques like distributing your reports or your row level security to bulk users, check out my old videos around them because they have done a pretty good job at covering a lot of these things. Thanks for watching. As usual, give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so I have to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel and get exclusive perks like early access, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.